Welcome to everyone. Again, it's really, really lovely to see you all, or see most of you, many of you, scrolling through the screens and seeing where folks are from St. Petersburg, Florida, and Pittsburgh, and Spokane, Washington, and Alberta, Canada, and hi, Olena, Austin, Texas. Let's see who else. Charlottesville. And please feel free if you'd like to Walnut Creek, California. And Juliana, you're from Southern California, I think. So, yeah. And if and everyone, welcome. It's in these times. It's a very powerful support, I think, for all of us to be able to come together in this way, and in classes and retreats and other ways, and just in many of the activities at the Center for Mindful Living in Tenleytown when we're together, and online now for just a whole wonderful variety of activities, a community coming together. And it's kind of going to be what I'm going to share some reflections about as we begin. I just want to really how we can support ourselves and support each other in these times. I like to keep myself oriented to get not to get too kind of disconnected, obviously, from where we are. And I was just checking that we're in the 25th week of the pandemic now, which is also the 25th week of us doing these classes online. So practically half a year now, in case anyone has been thinking it's been going on 5 years, or maybe just thought, that it began last month. I mean, I obviously don't mean literally, but the mind can we can lose track of time in these times. Also 13 weeks since the murder of George Floyd, that's had such a huge impact in our society and even in the world, and really calls us to a reckoning, and really 400 years of history, and how we can really come to terms with systemic racism and racial injustice. And I've spoken a number of these themes over the weeks. Just to mention, I'm sure nobody is unaware of it. We're in the weekend between the two party conventions, the Democratic Party convention last week and the Republican convention coming up this coming week, and we're 72 days away from the election, which Steve Schmidt, if you don't know him, he was the main leading strategist for John McCain, and so is a conservative all his life, but is not supportive of the current government, administration in power, and the president and all that's being done. But he speaks of this election coming up as the most consequential election since 1864. Election took place, towards the end of the Civil War, just to kind of speak to the importance of this time that we're living in. And I'm not going to take that as a kind of a place for talking reflection today. What I want to do is stipulate, as the lawyers say, take as a given all of that, take as a given that we're, and what we've talked about a lot over these last half year really, take as a given that these are very, very challenging times that we're living in. And these times are affecting us all in different ways. So I'm not wanting to kind of put a blanket, thing over everything and say we're all experiencing this in the same way. We're not. Of course, we're not. We're all being impacted, but in different ways. But I think I can safely say that I think for almost everybody, or at least most people, these are really challenging times to live in. All that's been brought up by, the health issues, the economic issues around the pandemic, everything that's come up around the racial justice, particularly in these last 3 months or so, and everything going on around the election coming up, and the hopes and the fears that come up, that we can get pulled this way and pulled this way. And so really stipulating that these are challenging times for us in different ways for all of us. And I've spoken a lot over these recent months about these being difficult times and how our practice can really support us in profound ways as we weather everything that we're going through in these times. If there's a kind of an overarching theme of what I've talked about, what I focus a lot of attention on, it's really this, that in difficult times, that our practice can be really a rock for us. It can be a refuge for us. And I want to kind of delve into that a little bit more, kind of in a somewhat more granular way in over the next kind of 15 minutes or so, to invite us to think about how each one of us, but how you and what are we dealing with? Where are we feeling, the push, the squeeze most? Because it will be different. Some of us may be really, anxious about how the elections are unfolding. Others may be caught up in a lot of worry and fear around their own health or health of loved ones, or maybe it's around economic issues. And maybe for some it's not too much of all of that, maybe there's concern around that, but it's not necessarily felt in a very kind of intense way ourselves. But I think all of us will be, or most of us, let's say, will be feeling some kind of pinch, some squeeze in these times. And I think the place to begin is just to kind of ask ourselves, where do we find the stress? Where do we most experience the suffering in these times? And how are we engaging with it? How are we responding? What particularly are the resources that we really find helpful? And what might we, I'm thinking both of inner and outer resources, but I'm really going to focus more on the inner ones. So in these times, and really in any time, there are outer, I think of it as outer resources, less focused on meditation. They're not necessarily inner resources as such. Let me pause there and say, they're not necessarily outer resources as such. I'm thinking, for example, that we exercise, that we get into our bodies, that we take care of ourselves. Nick gives me the thumbs up. Get back to the gym. That we really take care of ourselves in that way. We take care of ourselves in terms of our nutrition and diet and what we're taking in, which is huge. It has a huge impact on our overall sense of well-being. If we're kind of just putting aside, we're just going through our lives and we're stressed out and we're eating when we can and we're grabbing a Big Mac or whatever, a Five Guys pizza or whatever. I'm just thinking of seeing things I've passed in recent days. it's going to have an impact on us. It's going to have an impact on our sense of well-being. Similarly, if we're not taking care of how we're using technology, our phones and our computers, and if we're feeling stressed, so we're binge watching, Breaking Bad, or whatever it might be, trying to think what I'm not doing any of that in this time, so I'm not thinking of what the main things are for people right now. But the ways that we can not, act in maybe habitual ways in ways that don't really take care of ourselves, that don't really help us, that don't provide support, that don't provide helpful resources. So really taking care of ourselves in those ways as well. Making sure we get adequate rest and sleep. All these ways: exercise, sleep, nutrition, technology. Just really paying attention. These can be really powerful supports in keeping us balanced. So we're not, feeling, in our bodies feeling really kind of yucky, and then that affects our minds and all of that. I'm not going to go into those, but there's a book came out a few months ago, this one, Habit Swap, available at quality bookstores near you. That was my second book on bringing mindfulness to habits. And habits are really such an important part of our well-being. What we're doing all the time, and how we can cultivate healthy, beneficial habits, and how we can abandon and let go of ones that don't serve us, and the role that awareness, that mindfulness plays in creating that kind of in a way, it's a kind of a climate of well-being that supports us. But turning more, and again, maybe the inner and outer isn't so much the distinction that I'm wanting to make. Some are more about daily life, how we're living our daily lives, and some that I'm more focused on right now are more in terms of our practice, in terms of our practice of mindfulness and meditation, and focusing more on that right now. And in a sense, it goes without saying, but it's really important to emphasize as well that this, what we're experiencing together here today, is a huge resource in, as we go through these times. The gift of community, of sangha. Sangha, the third of the Buddha's refuges, taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, or the teachings, and the sangha, the community. And hopefully, many, or maybe some people are new, but most of us, almost all of us, I think, really appreciate and recognize how powerful this support is of coming together with like-minded people who are kind of on the same journey, or on a very similar journey or a path to living more freely, living with greater ease and well-being. One of the expressions of suffering, of dukkha in the Buddha's, in the language of Pali language, this sense of unsatisfactoriness that we experience, that suffering that the Buddha talked about, that is kind of at the center of our task, to be aware of suffering, to see where suffering is coming from, and to let go of suffering, abandon clinging, the cause of suffering. That one of the deepest expressions of suffering is this sense of being on our own, kind of, we're wanting something, or we're needing something, or we're wanting to push away something, that we experience this really as a sense of separation, of just caught up in a sense of I. And what it does is it really kind of disconnects us from others and from life. really, disconnects us from being, really opening to others and opening to life itself. And so coming together in community and sangha is really a huge support for our lives and for our practice. And, I've been thinking about some of the things that I've been doing myself in these recent months that I've found to be really important and very, very powerful. And it's not that I even said, oh, these are really hard times, I'm going to need to do this and this and this. But in some way, I found myself gravitating towards looking to practice for refuge, because here's how I see it. Many of us have a regular meditation practice and, maybe a daily practice. And a commitment to bringing mindfulness and compassion into our lives. And yet, when things get really hard and when we're living in really hard times, it can be, sometimes the practice can be very hard to access. If we're really stressed out, it can be, meditation can sometimes feel like a chore. It can feel like, oh, I need to do this because otherwise I'm going to be even more out of balance. But because we're feeling stressed, it's really hard to meditate. It's hard to practice. And so, sometimes we move away from the practice because it doesn't feel so much like a refuge. And it's almost like at those times, I think we need to go even more deeply into our practice. Not that it necessarily is easy to do that, but just really find what we find joy in our practice, find our way back to that. So I found myself at different times over the last year or so where, I meditate every day, but it almost sometimes feels perfunctory, okay, I've done it, and so that'll be somewhat helpful in my daily life. But it wasn't something I was going to, as kind of like, okay, as something where I'd find joy and find pleasure. And so one of the things I found myself doing over these last, say, 3 or 4 months particularly, is to increase the amount of time I spend meditating. So I consciously try and do an hour of practice a day. And I really try to consciously cultivate a sense of calm and well-being and pleasure in the practice. And maybe I'll talk some about that in the practice itself that we'll be doing. But that's one thing that I found myself doing, and encourage you at least to explore. And if you don't have a regular practice, then I'd really encourage you to develop one in this time. And just doing a 5-minute guided meditation, and on Insight Timer, there's thousands of these and great teachers. I have a 5-minute meditation on there that if you just wanted to listen to, just wanted to stop and pause and breathe for 5 minutes, that would be, helpful. And then you can build on that maybe over time to 10, 15 minutes, half an hour, etc. But if you do have a practice, just to explore deepening the practice of really going to the practice for refuge and seeing if it can be really joyful. It can be an experience where we find pleasure, we find joy. Not pleasure that we're clinging to, but pleasure, the Buddha talked about as really enjoyable. Just really resting in the simplicity and the pleasure maybe of the breath at the nostrils or at the chest, or the relaxation and ease of the out breath. Just really getting into that and using that as a doorway to calm and well-being. So that would be something. Another thing I found myself doing, and this has been somewhat kind of serendipitous, because a teacher that I was listening to, and I've shared this a little bit in recent months, whose talks I liked a lot, was actually had cancer and was moving towards his death and died in May. So, 3 months ago or so. And so I got myself into the habit of listening to a talk every day. And I'm not somebody that I'm somebody who kind of more like, if occasionally I listen to a talk if somebody recommends it or whatever, but I haven't been somebody who does that systematically really over the years. It's more on a selective basis. But there's something I found. I tend to go for a walk in the woods, so it's helpful. I get the exercise and I listen to the talk as I'm walking. And I found doing that every day for an hour or so, there's something about, just bringing me home. The talks are really, I enjoy the talks, but just the fact of coming back to do that every day. I remember Leonard Cohen used to say, the singer-songwriter who died the day before the last 2016 election. He used to say that he used to sing the same song to begin his concerts, and the song was "A bird on the wire," like a bird on the wire, like a drunk in a midnight choir. I have tried in my way to be free. I didn't try to sing it for you. And he, I think someone asked him why he began with that one. He said, "It returns me to my duties." He said, "It returns me to my duties." And that resonated with me. I heard him say that 20 years ago or something at a concert. And I think of this coming back, having a place to come back to that returns us to our duties. And I don't mean duties in a kind of, but in a kind of a broad and spacious kind of way, to what we're wanting to do, what we're loving to do, but it's also what we feel a certain responsibility in doing. And so it's a responsibility in just taking the time in our lives to do that. So to do that, and after a while, surprise, surprise, something that I never, did as a regular thing becomes a habit. So now it just, I don't need to kind of say, oh, I have to do this, I have to do this, or what am I trying to remember to do? It's like a river. It kind of goes, and it goes with the flow, as it were. The river flows in that direction, and anything that goes into the river gets carried along. And it's like that stream, so that it's just quite easy and straightforward to do it. And I'm not saying I'm going to do it every day for the rest of my life. I wouldn't be surprised, but who knows? But it's just kind of getting into that, and having that time in the day in the same way as having the formal sitting practice. It's like this teacher I spoke about, and whose talks I've listened to a lot of, Rob Burbea, I put his name in the chat, speaks about cultivating an inner reservoir of well-being, And I feel that when I'm actually in a conscious way meditating, as opposed to a more perfunctory way, and listening to a talk, let's say, and doing anything in that conscious way, we're cultivating that reservoir that we have available to us, particularly when times get tough. When we're really, something really difficult comes along, we lose our job, or a loved one is in difficult situation, or getting sick or something, or financial situation, whatever it is that we have to have resources that we go to. If we don't have the resources, then we'll inevitably kind of get swept away. It's like a big wave just, on the surfboard, and we just get kind of knocked off and thrown under. But if we have the resources, we're really much more in a place to ride the waves. So developing that inner reservoir of well-being. And those aren't the only ways to do it. There are other ways we might do it, but having some formal ways of practices, habits in our lives, and the invitation, I'm not saying this in any way as a should, but only as, you know, perhaps an encouragement and an invitation to, for each one of us to reflect, you know, what is it, you know, what is it for you already is or might be that would help you strengthen and deepen your practice. And the more we do strengthen and deepen our practice, the more um, the more we're inclined to go further into it, because and deeper into it, because this path is really boundless until we've let go of suffering completely, until we've become a Buddha or a fully awakened one. There's always growth, development, deepening, strengthening. And one of the things that comes with that is that almost inevitably, it's not though that as not as though the practice always feels like it's a practice of joy and happiness and well-being. It can at times be a struggle. We're working through things. We're in, you know, we're struggling with the practice. But the overall trajectory, I think, will be, if it's a wise practice, will open our hearts and will bring joy. I mean, it will be, we won't be doing it because, you know, oh, I need to do this. I'm checking this box because it has this other kind of benefit in daily life. It'll help me do this. It'll be because we really, there's joy that comes, that we feel in our bodies, our hearts, our minds in doing it. And it is a practice of joy. And I've shared this on other occasions, you know, the Buddha's followers in his time, 2,500 years ago, were actually known as the happy ones. They had nothing in terms of, you know, they didn't own anything. Everything they owned, they gave up to become monks and nuns and you know, obviously the householders, you know, had, you know, owned property, except, but the monastic community, they had nothing, and yet they were deeply, deeply happy, because it was that inner happiness that they'd touched into through these practices and through these teachings. So cultivating these inner resources. And just one more thing to say in that in that regard is, just to, if you haven't done longer retreats, you know, particularly, you know, a week-long or a 5-day or a 7-day retreat or longer retreat. But even if you haven't done a weekend retreat, you might explore that. If you haven't done a day-long retreat, explore doing a day-long retreat. Just what does this practice feel like over a more extended period of time, more than, you know, an hour and a half, where you can really kind of let things settle, like the mud, you know, in a glass jar, you know, that's shaken up and, you know, can't see through it. But once you take the time to settle, the dust, the mud settles to the bottom and the water becomes clear. And it's in some way a similar thing, that we get calmer and we more peaceful. Not all the time, and retreats can often be a struggle, but over time, kind of on an ongoing journey, we do find we deepen into our practice. And so we can find really times of deep peace, you know, that are very different from what are typically available to us in our daily lives. And again, there's kind of endless, almost boundless in terms of how deep we can go in our practice. So just to reflect on that as well, if you haven't explored those kind of deepening practice. And now, you know, they're being offered in fairly user-friendly ways online. So it's not as though you're online, you know, looking at a screen the whole time. There's a lot of other practices going on, to just explore that. And then just be, you know, before we go into the meditation, one of the main practices, one of the main kind of forms of practice that help us to develop this inner reservoir of well-being is what the Buddha called cultivating the good, cultivating beautiful states of heart and mind, like gratitude, like generosity, compassion, loving kindness, joy, equanimity, all of these qualities that don't have the element, they don't have clinging attached to them. They're free from, when we develop them, they may have some of that quality that we need to kind of let go of because we're not seeing it clearly. But as we deepen into it, they're not states of like things that we're holding on to. They're joy, their inner joy, inner well-being, gratitude, generosity, etc. And one that I have found particularly powerful, as well as the familiar ones of loving kindness and compassion and equanimity and joy, is the practice of gratitude. Because gratitude is a quality that we can touch into almost any time. We might be caught up in anger, anger with somebody, or anger with the world, or anger at ourselves, or in blame, or in wanting something we don't have. And all we need is just one moment to remember what we already have, to kind of switch the spotlight, turn the spotlight inward, and just touch into what we already have. And for me, it can be almost like a magical practice to, I don't mean magical in a real sense, but just really powerful to turn from the clinging into just the sense of appreciation and gratitude and thankfulness to what I already have. And it's almost like the channel has been completely changed. And we can do this really at any time. So I'm going to just stop here with just a kind of leaving that question, and we can come back to that in a minute. The question of, what are your ways of building inner resources to deal with the challenges of life and these times we're living in, and how might you deepen and strengthen them? And we can come back to that and maybe share that as a reflection in the chat room. So if you'd like to just take a few moments to come into a comfortable, relaxed posture, just taking your seat. Think of the Buddha, kind of the archetype of the Buddha, taking his seat under the Bodhi tree, under the tree of awakening. The sense of dignity, also of ease, of well-being. Very powerful support for our practice of meditation is to calm, relax the body and the mind. Just to invite a quality of ease and well-being. So take some moments to make any adjustments that you like to make to be as comfortable as you can be. Inviting the shoulders to relax. Noticing if the stomach muscles are tight, clenched. See if you can relax the belly. Let yourself settle into your posture. Closing the eyes if that's comfortable and letting the attention come inward. Come down into the body, feeling the contact with the surface beneath you. inviting the body to be at ease, be relaxed. Is there anywhere that you could relax a little bit more? Maybe the shoulders, or the facial muscles, or muscles around the eyes. Just connect with your breath. Notice how your breathing is right now. And you might consciously invite the breath to deepen. So letting the in-breath deepen. So the chest and the belly expand. And then the sense of relaxing, letting go as you breathe out. So in a really relaxed way, just take a few longer, deeper breaths. You might consciously invite in a quality of calm as you breathe in and breathe out. Calming the body, relaxing the mind. And whenever you're ready in your own time, just letting the breath settle back to its natural rhythm. But stay aware of your breathing. And see if you can connect with any sense of pleasure, pleasantness in your breathing. You might find some pleasure in the kind of refined feeling of the breath in the nostrils as you breathe in and breathe out. It may be a pleasant feeling, just the sensations of the chest and the belly rising and falling. Or just the sense of relaxing and maybe a sense of ease as you breathe out. And if you can connect with any pleasant feelings around around breathing, connected with the breath, you might just rest your attention there, just enjoying the feeling of the body breathing. And as you're doing that, you might, if you like, invite a smile or a half smile to your face. If it's helpful, thinking of a loved one or somebody close to you, dear to you, it makes you feel happy. And invite in that sense of happiness or joy or well-being, peace. Might let the pleasant feeling of the breath, if you can connect with that, or just the overall feeling of the breath, if it feels more neutral, perhaps. Be like a home base where you rest your attention and that you come back to. While staying connected with your breathing and, if possible, the pleasant feelings of the breath. You might touch into, connect with some things in your life that you feel grateful for. Just inviting that quality of gratitude, appreciation for what you have in your life. Loved ones, friends, people in your life. Conditions that help you to live with perhaps greater ease or well-being. Maybe health, access to resources. Maybe just an appreciation for being able to breathe and walk, if you can walk. The trees, wildlife. Spiritual practice, religious practice. Staying connected with your breathing. Taking in any pleasant feelings that come with gratitude. Whatever's coming up for you, whatever's arising, see if you can meet it with kindness and with acceptance. Just having an attitude, cultivating an attitude of kindness, perhaps creating a field of kindness that helps you hold whatever you're experiencing. Difficult thoughts or emotions or feelings. If you can let them come and go, stay for a while, and then when they're ready, pass within this overall climate, this field of of kindness, welcoming, accepting. Being able to connect with pleasant bodily feelings can be a way of encouraging the mind to come back, to naturally gravitate back. So we're not doing it so much as a duty, oh, I need to do this, pull the attention back. But so the mind, in a sense, kind of wants to incline in that direction. We're not trying to hold on to it or cling to it. Some other difficult mind state comes up. Just open to that. Welcome, allow. Let it come, let it be, let it go. And then, if it's available to us, to come back to calm or pleasant feeling in the body and the mind. Finish with this short poem from Rumi, the Sufi poet. Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door of your study and begin reading. Take down a musical instrument. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. So after the bell, we'll go into groups, 3 or 4, and invite you to share, if you'd like to, just for you, something about the resources, how these practices perhaps have supported you, and how, if at all, you might deepen or strengthen these practices. What might be something that you do? Please feel free, before Emily, we move into the movement with Emily, if anyone would like to share anything in the chat room, please do, about how your group was, and anything around the meditation or the talk, or what I shared, please feel free. I did, by the way, somebody asked for that poem. Since it was a short one, I just cut and pasted it and I put it in the chat. I also put the name of the teacher, Rob Burbea, in there, and Dharma Seed, where you can listen to a lot of his talks, 400 plus talks there. So Emily, would you like to lead us in some movement? Thank you.
Oops, where's Emily? I can't hear Emily.
There we go. Hi. So I invite you to stand and to just shift your weight from foot to foot, feeling the ground beneath you. And then turn your palms out and raise your arms, lifting up, breathing in, and then turn your palms out and allow them to drop down with the exhale. And inhale, lift, and reach up and cultivate the energy of the sky, the sunshine, the stars beyond. Just gathering that energy, and bring that energy to your heart. And gather the energy of this room, this community, and our loved ones, all of the people around us, with kindness and compassion, and bring that energy to your heart. And then gather the energy of the earth, that which provides such abundance, and bring that energy to your heart. We're going to do 6 movements of the spine. So if you bring your arms out into cactus arms, notice your right hand. We're going to shift to the right 3 times. So inhaling, exhale, right, and center, and right, and center. Last time, right, and center. We'll go left, inhaling, and left, and center, and left, and center, and left, and center. Take a good deep inhale and float your arms down, roll your shoulders, just move, roll them the other way. And then again, palms up, rise up, grasp your wrist, right wrist in your left hand, and tilt to the left. Breathe here. And inhale back to center. Switch wrists, inhaling deeply, Exhale to the right, extending out. And inhale back to center. Float your arms down and allow yourself to do whatever dance you might wish to do. Swaying wherever you need to be. And then soften. Come back to center. Grasp your hands behind your back. Take a deep inhale. Draw your shoulder blades together. Extend your arms out. Opening up the chest and float the arms down. Again, deep inhale. Shoulder blades together and lengthen your arms away from your chest, your body, and float down. Last time. Gather and extend. And allow your arms to drop down, floating up. Last movement is a forward fold, placing your hands above your knees. Take a good deep inhale in and exhale lower, dropping down your head, your shoulders, your upper back, middle back, dropping down to wherever you wish to be. Allowing this inversion to be and be with the gravity and the pull of it. Take a good deep inhale. Exhale with a sigh. And then place your hands above your knees. Lifting up. Hands at heart center and release to the sky. Release to the room and to the earth. Thank you. So grateful.
So good to stretch those muscles and come into the body. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in your own time, we'll come into another meditation. Take some moments to come into a comfortable, relaxed posture. You might take a nice deep breath in, release on the out breath, settling in, relaxing the body, relaxing the mind, dropping down out of the head, out of the thinking, and feel the body, feel the contact with the surface beneath you. It's helpful taking a couple of longer, deeper breaths. Letting yourself arrive again. Nowhere else to be, nowhere to go right now, just to be here. feeling the body, your breathing. And if you were able to connect with your breathing in a pleasant way, you might kind of go back to that resource if it's available and just sense pleasure of the breath of the nostrils or the cycle of the breath, the in breath and the out breath. The sense of ease of an exhale. The enjoyment of the breath can be an encouragement of the mind to come back, keep coming back. Finding joy and peace in this moment, if it's possible. Can this moment be a moment of peace, of ease? If you notice your mind going out for something, something you want or need or feel you need, some experience, something in the world you feel in some struggle with, just invite the mind to come back to the body, come back to the breath. And whatever is present right now, see if you can meet it with an attitude of kindness and acceptance. If the mind feels busy, moving off into thought, if you can meet that with kindness and just gently incline the mind back to the body, back to the breath, back to this moment without judgment, this moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. You might take a moment to appreciate yourself taking this time. As Martha Postlethwaite says, to create a clearing in the dense forest of our lives. Create this space to open to whatever is coming up, whatever's arising, whatever the conditions of our life, our own life, and the larger conditions of the country and the world, whatever they've kind of stirred up in us, whatever they've engendered in us. We have the choice of meeting what's here with kindness, with acceptance, with interest, with curiosity, without resisting, without judging, without pushing away. That we invite this receptive, kind awareness to whatever's arising, whatever's here, whatever's coming from the outside, whatever's coming from within us, within our mind, within our thoughts, within our reactions to what's going on. We can make space for what's here. We can untangle ourselves from when we get caught up in clinging. And we can cultivate beautiful, wholesome states of heart and mind. Now, just in this remaining few minutes, we might consciously invite the arising of kindness, first to ourselves, of compassion. Maybe breathing in a wish of compassion to ourselves, kindness. Recognizing that these are difficult times and we're all holding a lot. Just breathing in a wish, an intention. Could be words, may I be happy, may I be safe, healthy, may I be held in loving kindness. Making sure that we don't leave ourselves out of the circle of compassion and kindness, so that it's not all going outward, that we're including ourselves very consciously. We can then go outward, we can include everyone here, all of us here on this, connected in this way, feeling our shared commitment to waking up, to living more freely, living with greater ease and well-being, committed to a more compassionate and peaceful world. Can you feel those connections? All of us here together, even though we're not in the same physical space, that we can share this most energetic space of this field of community, of sangha, connection with each other. Just wishing everyone here everything good, happiness, well-being, good health, freedom from unnecessary suffering. And you might send those wishes out, however you express them yourself, however your mind wants to go out, your wishes, your imagination. Just wishing, may you be happy. May you be safe, free from harm. May you be healthy. May you be held in loving kindness, filled with loving kindness. We might let those wishes and intentions go out into the world with all the suffering of the world. And all the joys. We might feel our collective wish for our world, for all in it, all beings. Wishing that everybody be safe, free from harm, contented, joyful, peaceful. Just letting our intentions, our imagination go out into the world, wishing everyone well. May you be happy. May you be safe and free from harm. May you be healthy and well. May you live with ease and with kindness. Like feeling us all in this larger field of kindness, loving kindness. Wishing that all beings and our world get through this difficult time that we're living in with a minimum of suffering. And may we, each one of us, be forces of healing, of compassion, of wisdom as we go back out into the world. So we don't reproduce the divisions and the separation and the conflict. And we intentionally bring kindness and care into our actions and our words and our engagement with the world. these words from Meister Eckhart, the Christian mystic of many centuries ago. If the only prayer you say in your whole life is thank you, that would suffice. If the only prayer you say in your whole life is thank you, that would suffice. And Albert Einstein said, there are two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. So we'll thank you, everyone, and we're going to finish with a few announcements. I'll just share a couple of things. I've been teaching a class on Tuesday nights through these recent months, but I'm having to do my last one on Tuesday because of other commitments. But if you'd like to join us, 7 o'clock on Tuesday, it'll be on the IMCW website. And I've got an interesting thing coming up next Sunday before the class. It's from 9 a.m. Those of you who are on Insight Timer, I have a live session at 9 o'clock. It'll go to about 9:40 or 9:45 of Finding Peace Here and Now, I think it's called. So check that out if you are interested and available. And the last thing to share is just a reminder to those, almost everybody is aware, but if you're new, that there isn't a set cost or charge for the class, but you are invited if you're able to give dana or generosity. And I think Pat is going to put in the chat box ways that you can provide support to the teacher, in this case me. It's a tradition that's come down through 25 centuries, and appreciate your support, your support. So thank you for that. And